She's beating me, you all.
I want to have a pillow fight. Yee! No. We just got through eating supper. I hope y'all enjoyed the recipe that old KJ made. I wanted to get us teed up. We're sitting here in this room that I made up for my mother since her passing. I have two beautiful pieces of furniture in here that used to belong to her, along with some art and paintings that she had left me. And we're just thinking, I think both of us ate too much. What do you think?
I don't know. It was awful damn good.
Oh, it was. It was incredible. But this is a part of the pajama party where I'm going to ask you a few questions about the Chad and Lori Daybell case.
Okay.
And if you don't know, then just say you don't know, just so that I can get an idea, because honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know what you know and what you don't know. Okay, tell me in a nutshell what you know about the Chad and Lori Daybell case.
Well, I know she murdered her children, and they left and went to Hawaii and was living it up, and her poor children dead, and her pretending like she didn't know where they were. He murdered his wife and her husband.
Now, she murdered her husband with the help of her brother.
Yes. And that's really about it.
That's it?
Yeah.
You don't know anything else?
Well, I know they was caught in Hawaii, and they were brought back, and now they're going to stand trial. But as far as a lot of the basic details, no, I don't know.
Okay, do you remember what he looks like?
No, not really.
Do you remember what she looks like?
Yeah, I remember her.
Okay. Well, tell me what you think she looks like. Explain what you think she looks like. Be honest.
At the time that they caught them both, she had the blonde hair and her makeup on and everything. And she struck me as a hussy.
A hussy. Wonder where you got that word, a hussy.
My mama used to say that.
Well, I think that Lori was a very attractive woman at one time. When I look back at the pictures and all of that, and her pageant, she was Miss Texas, like a Mrs. Texas. She wasn't Miss Texas. She was a married woman who was in a pageant with other married women. But Chad Daybell, he's one ugly little heifer. I mean, when she met him, he looked like one of those Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Big old fat ass chin. He was lumpy dumpy, walked around like he had a corn cob up his ass. I looked at some of his old vids where he was promoting his books and stuff. He was an author, a doomsday author. Like, it was supposed to be fiction, but I think in his mind, and he was telling people behind the scenes that this is like some kind of prophetic shit, But when I look at those, before he met Lori, he just had so much weight on him, and everything. But as he got with Lori, she started sprucing him up, don't you know? I don't care what anybody says, y'all. Lori gave him his haircut, the one he had in Hawaii. I guarantee you, she picked out his clothes for him too. And if you look at the old pictures and the newer ones, she made him over into what she wanted. Like, I could almost see her, not coming out and saying, Chad, you need to do this or that. But I think she kind of tweaked him along the way and kind of threw in there, I know, I just know what looks good out there in the public. I've been on Wheel of Fortune. Do you know she'd been on Wheel of Fortune?
No.
She went on Wheel of Fortune when she was married to Joseph Ryan. And let's see, and then she also done her pageant. her Mrs. Texas pageant or whatever. Then she dumps him and gets with Charles Vallow. Have you ever seen a picture of Charles Vallow?
No.
That is the father, the adopted father of J.J. Vallow. Now, do you remember seeing pictures of the kids?
Only on television, yes.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't see it online or anything?
Mm-mm.
Well, J.J. Vallow was adorable, and so was Tylee. She was 16, going on 17. She looked a lot like her mother, and probably, given time, she would have grown into a beautiful, I mean, she was beautiful already. It's just a shame that that it ended the way it did for them. The potential, you know, but I guess now would be a good time for me to share the story of this case with Mary. And the reason that I want to do this is because, you know, we've all been, over 2 years now, we've been discussing all of this. And I thought, you know what? I can sit down and I can write it out by hand. I can type it out on the computer. I can do it in increments in terms of news about this case out of my mouth. But I don't think I've ever really tried to put it together in story form for someone who just knows a little bit about the case. I'm sure I'm probably going to leave out all kinds of stuff. Y'all know this is very complex. But I think I'm going to try to do it. This is a technique I'm going to use. It's almost like you know how you free flow on when you're writing? You just say you write down what you're thinking and you just let it go. Well, I'm going to do it verbally and just see what happens, because we've talked about everything in portions. But I'm going to try to put it together the best I can. Thus, a pajama party story time, okay? Y'all just let me give it a shot and leave in the comments things that I've left out, because you know what? There is a reason I do what I do. Trust me on it. So, this all started a few years back. Now, from the point of view, do you want this from Chad Daybell's point of view? You want this from Lori's point of view? Or do you want it sprinkled with a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Okay, well, if we want to go back as far as we can go, and what I've gathered with John Glatt and his thorough book on this case with Lori's upbringing and all that, I won't go there. I think what I'll do is I'll start out when Lori leaves Joseph Ryan for Charles Vallow. But before I do that, let me just say this. Let me preface it by saying that when she left Joseph Ryan, she'd accused him of molesting Tylee, which was their biological child together. Mm-hmm. This was before JJ was even in the picture. And she accused him of molestation. They did this big investigation, went in the house, took bedding out and everything, trying to see if this was something that really happened. Mm-hmm. They interviewed Tylee, said that they felt like she'd been coached. They found no evidence that Joseph Ryan had molested her. But Lori was going around telling everybody, woe is Lori. You know, she absolutely went to her bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, according to her own words, and told him, if you don't give me a temple recommend, I'm going to murder somebody. And that's on a recording. So she was already, and then she'd already had Alex attack him. Her brother Alex, now you remember Alex Cox, her brother, mm-hmm. who was part of all this too. He'd already attacked Joseph Ryan, stunning him with a stun gun and all that. And he went to jail, Alex did, for a time. But it just goes to show from the get-go, from where we're starting the story, that Alex was always there hanging around his sister, mm-hmm. and always there to protect her. Doesn't seem like that's a big deal. I mean, I've got two brothers, and you know, brothers want to protect their sisters, but you'll see as we go along that this was a little twisted. Mm-hmm. So she gets with Charles Vallow, and Charles's sister, Kay Woodcock, she had a son who had a child, which was J.J. Vallow. And she took custody, Kay and Larry Woodcock took custody of J.J. when he was a baby. And they loved, they loved him and all of this, but they realized they were much older when they found out that JJ had autism and that he would need that extra care. And Kay and Larry felt like JJ needed to be with a younger, more vibrant family. Charles Vallow had married Lori, and they seemed like a really happy, well-established, successful couple. And so to keep JJ in the family, Kay got with Charles. I think it was Charles and Lori's idea anyway to adopt JJ. So Kay and Larry wanted to be JJ's grandparents, and Charles was going to be the father, and Lori was going to be the mother. And Lori had Kobe, which was an older son, and Tylee from other marriages. But Kobe was pretty much an adult, and Tylee was still a teenager. Or, well, she was younger, but she was in her early teens, I'm assuming. Y'all, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So anyway, Lori and Charles, they adopt JJ, and their family is complete, and things go really well for a while. Now, what happens is Lori decided that she started showing signs that, I don't know how else to say this. She began to listen to people like, and you might not know who these people are, Julie Rowe and other people that were in this, they were kind of fringe people that were still members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but if the authorities there, whatever, would have known how they were doing things, and ultimately Julie Rowe got excommunicated or asked to leave the church. But they started Lori started reading all of this stuff and listening to all this podcast stuff. And it was about end times. It was about getting prepared for it. And at one point, even really before she got deeply into Chad Daybell's books, she was always talking about, she had told her nephew, which was Adam Cox's son, who had lived with her for a while, stuff like, I see spirits, and, I could drive off a cliff with my kids in the car because it's going to be the end of the world anyway, and just weird kind of things that Lori was saying, but nobody really, she wasn't hurting anybody. She had some weird ideas about things. I remember Adam Cox bringing up that Lori felt like she was more in an authority position that most men in that religion are, and Adam was like, I don't think that's the way it works. But ultimately, what she did was she started reading Chad Daybell's books, and she, I guess, before meeting him and everything, she probably, just admired him and felt like that, the things he was writing about were things that she would make her feel good and feel like there was more to it, something more magical, something more powerful, something more elite than where she was in her life. She'd already, went down this road of being on TV shows and pageants, and then she goes, and it's just my view that she adopted JJ so everybody could oogle her and say what a wonderful mother she was. But that's neither here nor there at this point. The bottom line is that at some point, Jason Mao, now this was another person that was in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He got in touch with Lori at the temple, and he's the one that got Lori introduced to a Melanie Gibb. Now, Melanie Gibb is one of these cult members that I don't know if you've watched any of my vids, but ultimately Lori and Melanie Gibb meet, and if you might not understand this, but there's different wards in this church. Like there's different in different parts of town.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it just so happened the one that Lori started going to, and this was the one in Arizona, Melanie Gibb went to, and Zulema, which was another cult member. They were members there, and they all started kind of hanging out. And before Lori met Chad Daybell, she went to one of Melanie Gibb's in-home meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a recording of the whole thing where Lori talks about she knew that she was a warrior beyond the millennia, that she was on equal footing with men, and she told all these people that was at Melanie Gibb's in-home meeting that she'd been through this terrible thing with this child molester, which was Joseph Ryan, which was a lie, and how she just could barely hold it together, and how she had to get a temple recommend, or she was going to murder somebody. Why Bishop would give her a temple recommend after her saying that's beyond me. I would think that he would have probably said, hey, I'm so happy that you want a temple recommend, but why don't we get you some therapy or something first to get rid of these feelings of wanting to harm somebody else. But anyway, so she meets Melanie Gibb, and they go to this in-home meeting, and the next thing you know, Melanie Gibb and her are taken off to go to this conference where they have all these different speakers that come that talk about all kinds of things. Whether it's, there's going to be a nuclear war, or it's going to be the end of the world, and so you need to buy up all these buckets of food, or you got to learn how to filter water, or you got to, do all these things in order to prepare yourself for the end times. And so she went, and that's where she met Chad Daybell. Finally, Lori got to meet Chad Daybell, the guy she had been reading his books. She was so just enmeshed. It'd be like if you read a series of books and you really thought, this author is really cool, and I would really love to meet this author, But it went way further for Lori. In my view, when she was reading these things in Chad's books, along with these messed up podcasts from Julie Rowe and others, Strauss and all these other people, that I think it gave her a sensual, sexual feeling, more of an excitement than she had because she'd been with Charles all those years. Mm-hmm. Nothing had changed on the part of Charles Vallow. He was like an oak tree. Okay, he worked his ass off. He gave her a big, beautiful home with a pool, indoor pool, and all this other stuff. He gave her anything she wanted. He spoiled her right. Nothing had changed on that. But something had changed in Lori where she didn't feel like her and Charles were soulmates. Mm-hmm. Now, this could be due to the fact that Charles Vallow, he converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was a Catholic, and he converted. And so maybe, and this is something I've ran across on message boards, some people consider these, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that some of them seem more, I don't want to say important, but if you were raised in it, then, you got more, in a way, you got more attention than if someone converted into it. Mm-hmm. So Lori, she felt like, that, there was this part of her, along with these feelings of, there's got to be something more to all this, and she'd already been through all these marriages. She'd already had 3 other husbands before this. So Lori never really was someone who said, I'm going to marry you, we're going to settle down, and it's going to be forever, okay? Mm-hmm. Her first couple of marriages, she was young, no different than a lot of young people. You grow out of each other, things like that. But once she got with Joseph Ryan, it just seemed like the excitement and all that fizzled out on him. Then she gets with Charles Vallow. everything's going good with that. And she had a really long relationship with him in marriage, 13 years. And they adopted JJ, and their family was so complete. But it didn't take long after she started getting in with these preparedness groups, Julie Rowe, these podcasts. It was said that every time she'd get in the car, instead of listening to music, just constantly listening to these podcasts over and over and over again. Which to me, I think it's thought reform. In other words, i.e. brainwashing to a degree. And not only that, if she was having these mental health issues where she felt like she had these things about her that she felt like nobody understood or whatever, it seemed to me that perhaps when she got with these weirdos, that it all started making sense in her own messed up mind. So back to her meeting Chad Daybell. Now, I'm not really clear on what every belief system is in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but from my understanding is people use this sometimes when they're trying to date women or whatever. They'll say, we were married in a different life. Now, they don't per se believe in reincarnation. They just believe they've been on other planets or something to that effect. So he told Lori when he first met her, and she already was just so orgasmic, emotionally and fleshly, when she walked up to him. When he, saw that she was basically a hussy, that, and she thought she was charming him, and he thought he was charming her, but really, ultimately, they were both dumb asses, they were both ignorant. But he told her this, and she immediately fell for him. And from there, she goes back to Arizona. He immediately starts contacting her via email. Then they start to talk on the phone. At one point, he comes down or up, from Idaho to Arizona, where she's in her husband's home, Charles Vallow's home, and invites a bunch of people over the weekend of this conference, and because Chad Daybell was supposed to be speaking at it, and he got to stay there. And there were people that said, when they left to go to the conference, that Chad would ride with Lori, or Lori would ride with Chad, and nobody else would be in the vehicle, which you really are not supposed to do that in that faith. It just seemed like they clicked immediately. It's like they wanted to click. And when I say click, I think they both were just horny as hell. The horniness wasn't everything. In other words, it wasn't just about sex. It's just that mere idea of Chad seeing this beautiful blonde who was interested in him, and he felt like he could take advantage of. And she, looking at Chad Daybell, who in the LDS, a lot of people was reading his books. He was saying they were about fiction, so he wasn't getting in trouble with the church. And people really liked Chad Daybell. He had never been in trouble before. He had been married to Tammy for 26 years. He had those 4 or 5 kids with her, and people really thought Chad was a good guy. And so Lori, she just basically wanted Chad, basically. But so he comes that weekend, and according to his, he texted a short story to her. In the short story, he's talking about that weekend. Whether it's true or not, I believe it's true, but if he was just making it up. But she came to his room in Charles Vallow's house, and they were doing this damn rubbing up against each other and shit, to get each other off and all that. A lot of the LDS do that clothes on clothes stuff. They think they can get around this fornication stuff by doing that, but the bottom line is it wouldn't have mattered. I think both of them came. No pun intended. They both came. I really believe they both got orgasmic. Y'all can laugh at me all you want, but the way that novel is wrote, He doesn't say that, but he does in a lot of words. And, so from there, she's meeting him at the airport. She's still married to Charles. He's meeting her when he can. He's still married to Tammy. Nobody really knows this is going on except for Melanie Gibb, Zulema, David Warwick, and Melanie P. This is the cult that Chad and Lori wanted to try to establish. They wanted to believe it. They wanted to believe Chad was this visionary guy who could see beyond the veil. In other words, he could see into the other, like the realm of death or another worlds or heaven or however whatever's behind the veil, right? Well, in this case, Mary, what was behind the veil was absolute evil. And when you go and start messing with all that shit, that's when you are knocking on the door and it's going to open, and we're talking demon possession. Now, I don't know what your stand is on that, but I believe it's in the Bible. I believe they were messing with some crazy ass shit, and I think that it enveloped them. And I'm not saying because that's the case that they couldn't know right from wrong, or that they couldn't turn away from their adultery or the plans that eventually laid out in the murders. So, back to when Charles Vallow gets shot by Alex. Lori's there, Tylee's there, JJ's there, and Charles comes to pick up JJ. Mm-hmm. And Lori and Charles have already split up. Lori's done left Charles. She's having an affair with Chad. Chad hasn't left his wife. He's not going to leave his wife. He told Lori, he said, I can't get a divorce. So Lori, knowing that she had this $1 million life insurance on Charles Vallow, she set it up. She knew. She acted like everything was fine. You can come get JJ for school. She knew he was coming to get JJ. This is what I believe happened. I believe he came there. Lori got a hold of his phone. They started fighting over it. JJ had already been taken out to the car. I believe Tylee saw the whole thing happen. And as I told you, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, maybe, yeah. The results of him being shot do not line up with it being self-defense. They said he had to have been laying on the ground when that second shot hit him. Alex lied. So Lori has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder of her husband, Charles, in Arizona. Okay? Mm-hmm. But at the time, that charge had not come down. So after that happened and she realized, she called the insurance company, and Charles was smart enough to leave his insurance policy to his sister Kay Woodcock. Mm-hmm. Lori took off with Tylee and JJ to go to Idaho after that to be close to Chad. So she comes to Idaho the 1st of September, and by September 8th, Tylee has been murdered. She's not even a week into living there, and Tylee's been murdered. And the reason I believe that Tylee's been murdered is because I believe Tylee saw what really happened and knew, and she, as a teenager, she knew that she could hold this. Y'all, you know how teenagers are. They see a parent do something wrong, they might stick up of them, just like at her interview, she went along with the plan and all that. But if something didn't go Tylee's way, she'd throw a fit, and she might have thrown that up in Lori's face. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'll tell you this. Lori and Chad knew that Tylee was an expendable, that she had to be gone. Because you have to ask the question, if it was meant for Tylee and JJ to die, why not them die at the same time, on the same date? Mm-hmm. What happened was Tylee was murdered. I believe Alex murdered Tylee with the help of Lori. I don't know that Lori was physically there. I know she was, in my view, my opinion, she was there when JJ was murdered. She helped with that physically. But in terms of Tylee, I think Alex and Chad took care of that situation. And then about a little over 2 weeks later, this is when JJ is murdered. And I believe Lori and Alex murdered JJ. And I believe Tylee was murdered in the apartment of Lori's. I don't believe Tylee was murdered in Alex's apartment. But I think JJ was. Because the weekend that he died, and I say it's on a Sunday, other people think it's overnight, Sunday to Monday, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick were there, and I believe they knew that JJ had been murdered. And I think they knew before that Tylee was dead too. A couple of weeks before, Melanie Gibb says that Lori and them said that Tylee went off to college. Well, Melanie Gibb knew better than that. She knew because she was walking around the BYU track where Tylee was supposed to be going to school. She was walking around that BYU track with Chad and Lori as they were continuing their adulterous affair, holding hands and kissing. So the kids are murdered. And so Lori did not get money from Charles. She continued to get the money from Tylee's inheritance, or whether it was a trust account from her father, Joseph Ryan. She continued to get that, and also the Social Security benefits from JJ. But that wasn't going to be enough money for Lori and Chad to be gods like they wanted to be. See, they were going to be the king and queen of the 144,000. They were going to usher in the new, when the world ended, they were going to be the ones that was going to do everything. They were going to be the king and queen. So they went up with another plan. They had another cult member, which was Lori's niece, Melanie P. I say Melanie P because there's Melanie Gibb. So I always distinguish between the two. And Melanie P's ex-husband, Brandon, which, by the way, Lori had talked her niece into believing that Brandon was gay, and basically prying Melanie P away from Brandon so that she could be one of their followers. And she loved Lori. That was her aunt. It was her favorite aunt. She would do anything her aunt wanted her to do. She wanted to be as exciting as Lori. She wanted to be as pretty as Lori. And Lori always made herself out to be like she was so well off and had money. And Chad was going around believing that Lori had all this money and stuff. But ultimately, Lori had to ask Chad, hey, I'm here in Idaho. The kids are murdered. You're still married to Tammy. And so they come up with another plan. And I believe Chad and Alex come up with this plan to kind of sidetrack Lori wanting Chad to get rid of Tammy. And that was the plan, to take out Lori's niece's ex-husband for his insurance money that would go to Melanie P. Thus, if Melanie P got all this money, Lori and Chad and the cult would have all this money. So the plan was Alex was going to drive this Jeep into Arizona, and Lori and Chad were going to help with the Jeep seat that was in the back and the tire that goes on the back of the Jeep seat. Put it in the storage unit that's on video, so we know that happened. And he goes to Arizona, and he shoots at Brandon. He misses. There's all kinds of evidence, empirical evidence, that Chad talked to Alex before the shooting and after the shooting on burner phones. But obviously, they haven't charged Chad or Lori or anybody in the attempt on Brandon's life. I don't know if that'll come out or not, but that didn't work out. So Lori, living off of JJ's benefits and what money was coming to Tylee, just wasn't going to do it. Not only that, Lori was putting pressure on Chad by sending him text messages saying things like, just be with her. I don't want to get in the way of it. You just go and be with it. I understand. Maybe, just maybe, down the road, there's something there for us. and she's waving her damn, between her legs to him. You're not going to get any more of this, basically. And go ahead and go back to your wife. And Chad, being the horn dog he was. And the fact that he had been telling Lori all this stuff about himself, and she was telling him stuff about herself too, it just riled him up to believe that they could get away with this shit. As stupid as that sounds. The things they'd already gotten away with. They thought they could just keep walking away from it. And so, what happens? In October of 2019, he murders Tammy. We don't know what exactly happened, but we do know that originally he said that she went to bed with a cough. His daughter said there was pink foam coming out of her mouth the next day in the morning when she was dead. And they didn't do an autopsy because in Idaho, you don't have to have one unless you request one. And they ruled it natural causes. Well, when all this shit went down with all this other stuff, Idaho's like, well, wait a minute. So 2 months after Tammy's death, they exhume her body and rule it undetermined, which i.e. turns into murder charges by Chad Daybell. Now, Chad's daughter Emma came out on 48 Hours and said that the state told her that it was asphyxiation. Well, and I just don't see her coming out on TV saying that's what the state said, unless they said that. But if we back up, after Tammy was murdered, it wasn't, let's see, that was October 19th. By November the 5th, okay, Lori and Chad are running off to Hawaii to get buried. So you got Lori's children buried in Chad's backyard. You got Charles dead in Arizona. You got Tammy murdered by Chad. And here they are going into Hawaii, getting married on a beach with no family, nothing. They got each of them when they did a search warrant on their place there, 2 yoga mats, no sign of the kids. This was them starting their new life. It's very interesting, is it not? If they thought it was getting to be the end of the world, what the hell are they doing in Hawaii? Like, it's going to be any different there, And if Hawaii was where they wanted to be, they came back to Idaho after being there on their honeymoon. And, from then on, from November 5th, I think they stayed like a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure, but I know for sure a week. They get back. And while they're back, November the 26th, Kay Woodcock and Larry Woodcock had not heard from their grandson, JJ. And in times past, JJ would call them, FaceTime them. But when Lori left Arizona after murdering Kay's brother, you can imagine the tension there. But even then, Kay was like begging Lori, please, emailing her, please, or sending her text, please just let me see JJ. And Lori would not allow it. And so Kay and Larry didn't know where JJ was, and they loved him so much. So they finally contacted someone, Gilbert, Arizona, and said, hey, would y'all please get in contact with the law enforcement down here? Because what happened? Kay saw that Lori had been on Charles Vallow's Amazon account. And when she went on it, she saw that Lori had purchased wedding bands and a wedding dress before Tammy died. Can you believe that shit? It's like she knew she was getting married to Chad before Tammy was murdered. So when she saw those purchases on there, she saw the address that is where it was being sent to, and they sent law enforcement down there to do a welfare check, and that's when all hell broke loose. Chad and Alex was out in the yard when the policeman walked up, and they asked about JJ, and Alex said he's with his grandmother, and they said, well, that can't be true because it's the grandmother that's asking us to do a welfare check. And Chad acted like he didn't know who Lori was, even though he'd been married to her for several weeks. And Lori acted like she wasn't married to Chad. She just said, yeah, that's Chad Daybell. He's an author. She didn't say, that's my husband. And another thing, when they got back, why weren't they living together? Because he'd already told his children they were married.
Yeah.
And he'd already been telling everyone once he married her, he told everyone at church she was a rich woman and an empty nester. He told his parents that Lori didn't have kids, that she didn't have children, or that she was an empty nester. And he even told some people that Tylee, yes, she did have a daughter, but she had died a couple of years before, or something like that. I mean, like, these people thought that this was going to fly. So, what happens after the police leave on, well, let me just back up a minute. Lori tells the police that JJ is with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona. And Chad calls Melanie Gibb and says, if the police call, don't answer the phone. And then Lori tells Melanie Gibb over the phone, hey, go to a movie theater and walk around and take pictures of kids and send it to my phone so I can show the police. You know, they'll think, oh, yeah, she is at the movie Frozen, right, with JJ. Melanie Gibb, she didn't answer the phone. She did buy Chad and Lori some time, but she wouldn't go on with that about the movie. She told them that, yes, JJ had been with her, but that he had gone back with Lori, which was a lie. She had to admit that on the stand. He never had been with with Melanie Gibb. So she initially lied about it. Then she took time away until she finally came clean, and she knew that the shit was fixing to hit the fan, so she better come out on the right side of this. But through it all, Melanie Gibb knew everything that was going on. And yet she hasn't been arrested. And neither are the rest of them. And that's what the harsh reality of this whole story is. Yes, Chad and Lori are evil, diabolical people. And so was Alex Cox. But all these other members of this cult knew damn well. I mean, Melanie P. moved right next door to Lori. Okay? The kids are murdered in September. Her niece moves next door to her 1st of October and never sees Lori's kids ever again. And she acts like, well, I guess Tylee was with friends and JJ had a special school. Give me a break. Give me a break. She knew they were dead. All of them knew that. And, you know, I'm just telling you, until the hammer comes down on all of them, I'm not going to be satisfied. I do have to get justice through understanding. And part of that understanding is knowing that justice doesn't always happen for everyone the way that it should, in my view. So anyway, when the welfare check happened and the police left, they had to get a search warrant. They couldn't get it that day. They came back the next day. It is now known that when the police left on November 26th, that Lori and Alex grabbed everything up out of Lori's apartment, threw it in the back of Alex's truck, and hauled ass out of there. And yet Melanie P. is telling everyone in interviews, oh, it was a planned move. It was a planned move. No, it was not. Oh, it just so happened to be a planned move on the day that them police busted their ass.
That's right.
They busted them. Just as Chad busted that black hole whore. I'm telling you, it's aggravating as shit. So, anyway, back to the story.
She gets fired up.
Okay, well, it just aggravates the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they take off to go to Hawaii. And they're in Hawaii. And the FBI's come out because the FBI gets involved when there's children. And, they put out a damn all points bulletin. The local police, Rexburg, all them are saying Lori Daybell knows that her children are in danger and won't cooperate with us. And so they're in Hawaii. During this time, Tammy's body's exhumed. During the time they're in Hawaii, Alex mysteriously dies in December. They say, the autopsy says natural causes. I don't believe it. I believe it was some kind of poison or something that they didn't know to check for in the regular toxicology report. That it's just too much. His situation, Joseph Ryan's situation, and Tammy Daybell's situation, they're almost all identical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and think about in such a short time, in such a short time, all these people dying, just dropping like flies. So they track Lori down. Well, let me back up. In January of 2020, see, the 2019, Alex is dead by December, and Lori and Chad's taken off. Well, by January 2020, they are doing a search warrant out at Chad's property, but there's so much snow on the ground. They didn't realize it then, but those children were there. They were in the backyard. But they did do a search warrant on the place and everything, and they had already arrested Lori in Hawaii. Chad had gone back home, and that's when in January, that's when they arrested Lori in Hawaii. Chad came back to Idaho while she's sitting in Hawaii in jail. She had got extradited back. When she came back to her first hearing, she walked in there acting like she was a damn floozy with damn nasty-ass lipstick, walking around like she was holier and, high and mighty and all this shit, while Kay and Larry and everyone else that was concerned about the kids were just aching in their hearts, wanting to know where the children were. And she was acting like she wasn't going to give her children to anybody. In other words, her and Chad knew as long as those bodies weren't found, she could say they were off somewhere, being taken care of someone, and the government can make me sit in jail all they want for not producing them, but they can't keep me in jail forever. And no matter how long they keep me in jail, they can't keep me in jail as long as they're going to keep her in the freaking prison now. They couldn't charge her with murder without those bodies. And she knew that. And so when they came and did that search warrant at Chad Daybell's, when they didn't find anything, they didn't find the children because of all that snow, Chad told Lori, you better believe it. He told her, see, there's a force field, a spiritual powerfulness from my visionary power that kept the police from finding those children, because it was ordained that those children should die, because the reason that they give, and I don't believe it, was that their children were inhabited by these terrible spirits, and in order for the children's real spirits to go on to their next life, they had to kill a body. Okay? What a crock of shit. They just wanted the money.
Yeah.
So, from then, Chad was out of jail the whole time. But what's interesting to me about it, and this is just interesting, he married her back in November of 2019. That made him a stepfather. And nobody knew the children were dead. And yet she's the only one going to jail over not producing the children? He should have went to jail too over non-production of those children, because he was her husband. But it didn't happen. But it did happen months later, June 9th, that fateful day. They went out there. Do you need to put your leg up?
Yeah, I got a cramp.
Okay, get on up. I'll finish this up. She's got a cramp, y'all. She's listening to my damn story. Are you okay? That's what happens to us old folk. Anyway, so what happens is Chad gets arrested when they went in the backyard and they found Tylee in the pet cemetery, all chopped up, all burned up. And what's interesting about it is they've got him on a text message the year before telling his wife Tammy that he's burning limb debris and he shot a raccoon and buried it in the pet cemetery at the very same time that Alex Cox his GPS was out there for 2.5 hours. So They're both in jail. They both been, they're facing the death penalty. They're both evil as hell. They both they both of them need their asses stomped. They both are going to get convicted, in my view. And you know what, y'all? I might have left out a lot on that. And just put in the comments what you think. I think I got to rub her leg. She's got a cramp in her leg. But anyway, that's what I get for making her sit up here on this damn high-ass bed. Anyway, when we get back together, I've got some closing thoughts and some personal thoughts from old KJ. So leave your comments. We'll go with part 3, which will be the last of the pajama party deal, y'all. And keep on looking.